Hello, in this video I want to show you how to have conversation with your characters in Unreal Engine. You can use this to create your own virtual assistant or create smart NPCs in games. The best way I can show you this is to do a demonstration of what we're going to be creating in this video. So as you can see, here's a character here, and I'm going to have a conversation and ask a League of Legends question. What should I play against Darius in the top lane?
There are several champions that can be strong picks against Darius in the top lane. Here are a few options. 1. Garen. Garen's passive sustain allows him to trade effectively with Darius. Additionally, Garen's Q ability can silence Darius, preventing him from using his important abilities. 2. Teemo. Teemo's range advantage and blind ability make it difficult for Darius to engage and
Right, I hope you enjoyed that. Let's go ahead and create this, and I hope you're excited. All right, so there are four pieces that we need to incorporate into the project in order to have a conversation with any character that we want in Unreal Engine. The first thing that we need is speech to text. Basically, when we talk into the microphone, we want to be able to change that into text. And the way we do that in this project is going to be using Azure, Microsoft Azure. And the main reason I'm using that is because there's a very good plugin in Unreal that we can use to communicate with Microsoft Azure. And another good thing is when you actually start with it, you have you can make free calls to the API. There is some limit, but if you're doing a demo or just playing around with it, it should be sufficient enough. The second piece is we need to send whatever that we say into the microphone and send it to ChatGPT. So we're going to use OpenAI for that. And there is also a free trial for OpenAI APIs if you haven't used it already. One small thing is that they give you around like $18, $20, but it also has an expiration date. So even if you don't use that 18 bucks, it'll still expire after a bit. After that, when we get a response from OpenAPI, step number 3 is changing that text into speech. Again, we're going to use Microsoft Azure for that. So if we set up number 1 properly, number 3 is going to be easy as well. The fourth thing we're going to need, and this is like a sprinkling the cherry on top of the cake, we're going to add a talking animation. Again, there's a free one from the asset store, and I'll show you how to get that. And then number 5 is just adding logic to the character so that it plays the talking animation whenever it's talking, and for it to go back to an idle animation whenever it stops talking. This is the 5 steps we're going to take. There's a little bit of setup, but the actual implementation in Unreal Engine is not that complicated. So let's get into it. All right, so to start the project, go ahead and create a project in Unreal Engine 5.1 and go ahead and choose the third person template. The reason we're using Unreal Engine 5.1 is that most of the plugins and animations that we're going to be using are the latest support for them is still 5.1. They haven't updated to 5.2. So we're going to go ahead and use 5.1 for this one. So first step, let's go ahead and get the animation for the talking animation, the idle animation, and the NPC we're going to be using for this tutorial. So we can go ahead and go to Epic Games for that. So once you have your marketplace open, you can go ahead and search for Actor Core. And you should see the Actor Core sample motions. This is the one we're going to be using. It has a bunch of avatars and some sample animations, including the talking one, which we want to use. So you can go ahead and click on Add to Project and add it to the project that you have. All right, so once you add it to your project, you should see a folder with the Actor Core sample motions, and you have all these different dummy female, dummy male, idle, walk, sit, and everything like that. We're gonna use the dummy female for this project. So what we're going to do now is go into the content folder, and we are going to create a new folder and call it blueprints. And we're going to go inside of here, and we're going to create a new blueprint class, and we're going to choose a pawn because this is going to be the NPC that we're talking to. So we're going to click that, and I'm going to call it BP underscore NPC. I'm going to go ahead and open this. So on the left side, you can see there's not much in this. There's just the BP NPC pawn. So we're going to add a skeletal mesh so we can add our model to the blueprint. So click on skeletal mesh, and then we are going to come and assign a skeleton to it. Again, we're going to be using the dummy female for this one because this is the one which has the talking animation. So I'm going to choose the dummy female. We don't need any capsule collider or anything like that. So for now, this is sufficient. We are going to just add it to the world, and we are going to rotate it. And right now it's in T pose. It doesn't have any animations, but that's okay. We're gonna do that later. So the next piece we're going to do is we are going to implement the speech to text. So we want to be able to talk in the microphone and have it convert into text. And for that, we need Microsoft Azure. So I'm going to show you how to set that up. So in Google, you want to search for Microsoft, or you can search for Azure Cognitive Services. And the first thing that comes up is what you're looking for. You're going to click on it, and you'll see the try cognitive services for free. You can go ahead and click on that and then use the start free button. And this is where you want to create your account, and it will ask you for some information. You create your account, and then you go to the next step. So once you create your account, then the next step is on the top, you should see some Azure services, and you want to choose the cognitive services here. So you want to click on that, and it'll bring you to this page here. And what we're looking to do is to use the speech service. So what you want to do here, you just click on create, and it will bring you to this page, and you can fill in some information and get this going. So it asks you for a resource group. So if you don't have one, you can just press create new, and it'll help you create a new one with any name that you want. It's not super important. For the region, you can choose whatever region you want and give it a name. There's some rules on what the name wants to be. You can just choose the standard, which is free to some point as well. So as you can see here, the speech to text for the standard pricing is 5 audio hours per month, which is free. And then after that, you have to pay for it. You can see the details of each one, and then you can go ahead and read about it as well. So after you do that, you review and create the service. Once you create the cognitive service, you should see it just like I'm seeing it here. You don't want to go into the resource group. You want to go into the actual speech service. So you go ahead and click on that, and you're now onto your speech service, and it's ready to use. All right, so let's see how we can now use Microsoft Azure now that we have set it up. So let's go into the Epic Game Launcher again. And over here, we need another add-on to be able to talk to Microsoft Azure. And we're going to search in the marketplace for AZ Speech, which is short for Azure Speech. This is a nice plugin someone has made to talk with Microsoft Azure and use the blueprints to do so. So you're going to go ahead and click on that, and you're going to click on Install to Engine. So once you click the Install to Engine, you want to go back to Unreal Engine, and you're going to go to Edit and go to Plugins, and you're going to search for AZ Speech, and it should come up. You want to make sure to enable it. So over here, it tells you that it's in beta version, and Epic recommends caution. I personally haven't had any issues using it, so up to you what you want to do here. So I'm going to press yes, and you're going to have to restart your Unreal Engine editor. Okay, once you restart your editor, you want to go into your plugins, search for AZ Speech, make sure it is enabled. All right, so now that we have the plugin, we need to change some properties in the plugin so it knows that in what it needs to call in Microsoft Azure to do the speech to text and text to speech. So you want to go to edit, go to project settings, and you want to scroll all the way down to the plugin section, and you're going to find AZ speech, and you're going to go ahead and click on it, and you're going to see a bunch of threads here. You have AZ speech. You want to open the default options here, and we're going to change a bunch of things. So if you go into the subscription options, there's a place for the subscription key, the region ID, and all these different things. So you want to use your private endpoints. You want to use the endpoints that you have. So you're going to get that endpoint by going to the Azure page that you have, and you should see your endpoint right here. So you can go ahead and copy that. The next thing that we need is the subscription key. You can find your subscription key right here in the keys section. It'll have one, and if there's no keys, you can generate one. So you can just copy that and paste it over there. They also allow you to manage your keys up on the top right here. All right, the next thing you want to choose is your locale. So we're going to use ENUS for this, but there are other languages that are supported. If you just Google the locales, it'll show you a list of what's available. You can add a profanity filter if you want as well. These settings are for how much should Azure wait whenever like you pause in your sentence. So you can play around with these if you want. I'm gonna leave it as default. So you want to go ahead and open the synthesis options. This is where you tell it what voice to use. So the locale, again, is going to be ENUS in my case. And there's a bunch of voices available for Azure. So this is where the supported languages are shown. I just basically Googled voice list for Microsoft Azure speech service. And if you go to text to speech, you'll see all the different voices that are available for all the different languages and locales. So this is where you can choose a voice. In my case, I'm going to use the ENUS Amber Neural. There's a lot of voices, so you can play around. This part completely in your hands of how you want to do it. We don't want you want to make sure that you don't have this checked. We don't want visemes, and what this is facial expressions, the lip expression when someone talks. So what you can do with these is to do lip sync. So for example, if you use a metahuman, this is something you can use to do lip synchronization whenever they're talking, which is not what we're going to be covering here. The last thing is here, you don't want to do the visem facial expressions again, so we're going to remove that. And you can also enable internal logs and debugging logs in case something goes wrong. You can actually see the logs of why it's not working. It can be quite helpful. With that, you should be good. So we're going to close this and finally actually get this to work. So we're going to go into our third person character, go to the blueprints and open BP third person character. This is where we're going to code the logic for speaking, because this is the character that we're controlling as the player. So we're going to come here and we're going to make it so that it's push to talk. So whenever we push down number 1, we're going to be able to talk. You can use any key mapping that you want. So I'm going to search for keyboard 1, and here's the keyboard event 1. You can do anything that you want. So whenever 1 is pressed, I want to be able to talk into the microphone and have that change into text using Microsoft Azure. So the way you do that is there is a speech to text blueprint. So you can see here, speech to text, you can either use custom options or the default. Since we already set up the default options to be what we want, we can just use this one right here. You can set the local audio input device ID and the phrase group list. We don't need to set any of these because we already set them up. You can set the locale here again if you want, but it's reading it from the from the actual default options as well. But if you want to be safe, you can fill it up here. This will take care of everything. It'll actually record your speech, send it to Azure, and then Azure will send you back the text of what you just said. And for us to test this, we're going to create a variable here, and we're going to call it prompt, because this is the question we're asking the NPC. And I'm going to change it into a string. And I'm going to drag it here, set prompt. We want it to be whatever is the final string that Azure returns. And we want it to set this whenever it is completed. So the way this code is written is that it's not waiting for you to completely finish, like it's not sending the whole sentence and waiting for everything to come back. It's doing it asynchronously. So as you're speaking, it's sending all the bits and pieces to Azure, and it's processing all the stuff that you said in parallel and then sending it back. So that's why we take it from research recognition completed. And so we wait until everything is finished, and then we want to store it in the prompt. And for us to test it, we're just going to print it to make sure that everything is working. We're going to print string, and then the duration, let's make it 5 seconds so we don't miss it. All right, so we're going to hit compile. Make sure you have a microphone, and then we're going to hit play. All right, so I'm going to hold 1 and say something and see if we get it printed on the screen. Hello, how are you?
So as you can see, it's not working right now. So I'm going to take a look and see what's going on.
So one thing we missed to do is we didn't set up the region. So you want to go into your project settings, go to the AZ speech, and you want to make sure you set the region ID. So before setting the use private endpoint, make sure you set this to whatever region ID that you put. In my case, I'm going to put East US. So make sure you do that. In order to be able to edit that, make sure you uncheck the use private endpoint, set that up, and then hit it. It should automatically set it to East US whenever you put the endpoint, but if it doesn't and you have the issue that I'm having, then that's something that you need to do. All right, so let's go ahead and run it again. Now we have our thing, the application running. So now you want to hold down 1. So I'm going to hold down 1 and speak into the microphone. Hello, how are you? As you can see on the top left, you see the Microsoft Azure is changing the speech into text. This is a course on having a conversation with AI. As you can see, it's pretty fast and it's pretty exact. So we have that piece down. Now we need to just send this text to ChatGPT. So before we can do that, we need 2 things. We need the plugin to talk with ChatGPT, and we need an account to call OpenAI. So let's go ahead and do that. So in order to make calls to ChatGPT, we can use a plugin. This plugin is recommended by OpenAI. So you can come on this link, github.com, OpenAI. I'll put it in the description. And over here, there's the installation guide. So you basically need to download the plugin. If you click on this link, it'll take you to Google Drive, and you want to download the one that is associated with the version that you're using, which in our case would be OpenAI API 5.1.zip. So you want to download that, unzip it, and go to the next step. So once you download the plugin and unzip it, you want to copy it, and you want to come into your project. In my case, it's an Unreal Projects conversation tutorial. So once you're in your project, you want to create a new folder here, and you're going to call it plugins, and you're going to paste the add-on right here inside the plugins folder. So I'm going to go inside the plugins folder and paste the unzipped version of the plugin. So once you do that, you can go back into Unreal, and what we want to do here is we want to restart Unreal so the plugin shows up for us. So go ahead and do that. All right, so once you restart, you're going to go to Edit, Plugins, and you're going to search for OpenAI. and you should see the plugin, it's enabled, and you're good to go. So we're gonna close this. There's one more step, I promise. So you're gonna go into your browser again. You're gonna search for OpenAI API. You're gonna come in. You're gonna either create an account or you're gonna log in like me, and you want to go onto your. You want to click on the top right and go into your View API keys, and this is where you can see your API keys here. You can create a new one if you want. If you have nothing here, which you probably don't, and you're gonna copy this. You won't, if you already have a key, you're probably not going to be able to copy it, so you're going to have to create a new one and then copy it, because it doesn't allow you to go back to it for safety reasons. So go ahead, copy your key. So once you have your key, we need to set the key for OpenAI in our project. So you can do that in anywhere you want. In our case, I'll just put it in the map level. So I'm going to open the level blueprint, and then inside the docket right here. So over here, I'm going to right click and look for begin play. So as soon as the game starts, I'm just going to set the OpenAI key, and you're going to search for the set OpenAI key blueprint node, and over here you can paste your API key right here. So do that and hit compile and save. Okay, so now that we have OpenAI integrated, we are going to, so now once we have the text, when we talk, it changes into text. We want to send this text, this prompt, to OpenAI and then have it give us back a response. So let's go ahead and do that. We are going to make a function. I'm going to make an event. I'm going to call it, so we're going to search for custom event right here. And we're going to call this call GPT. So we're going to right click here and we're going to search for the OpenAI call chat. So this is the node we're going to use right here. And in order to call OpenAI, we need to give it the messages that you want to send to it. So if you've used ChatGPT, which I know everyone almost has, you first give it some prompts for it to know what you want it to do, right? You want to tell it you're a financial advisor, you're a game coach, you're a sports advisor, whatever it is that you want to do. So you want to give it some messages in order for it to give you back a response. So we need to do that first. So we're going to drag from the chat settings right here. I'm going to give us some more space. So I'm going to drag from the chat settings, and once you drag it and let go, it'll have a make chat settings. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And as you can see, it takes an array of messages, a bunch of messages that it will feed into the OpenAI call. So what we want to do, we want to assign it some messages and the prompt that the user gives to it, and we want it to give back a response. So how do we do that? We are going to create a variable here, and we're going to call it messages, which is all the messages that we want to pass to the to ChatGPT, and the type of the message is chat log. So you can search for chat log, and it's right here. So we're going to choose that. And we also, right now, it's only one element. We want it to be a bunch. So once you click on messages, you're going to hit compile here. And then once you click on messages, come to the right here. So click on the messages and come to the right here in the details panel. So you want to make this variable by clicking on this icon right here. You want to change it from single into an array, meaning that we want to pass it a bunch of messages rather than just one, because we want to make a conversation, right? We want to give it all the history of the conversation. So once you do that, you can actually open this messages right here under default value, and you can give it whatever it is that we want it to be, right? You can either give it a system message, a user message, or an assistant message. And you can go ahead and read about in OpenAI what each of these are and how you can use them. It depends really on if you have access to ChatGPT 4 or not. But in my case, I just want to use the system message, and I want to say that it's you are an expert in League of Legends. For example, you are coaching me. the user to get challenger, something like that. Whatever it is that you want it to do. Maybe you want it to be your virtual assistant. Maybe you want it to be a NPC in a game. It's totally up to you. So once you have that set up, we can already pass that into the into this, but we also want to add whatever message that the user also passed through, right? So we want to pass that as well. So we're going to drag our prompt here, which we did in the previous section, and then we are going to right click, and there is a node called make chat log, which will make a something like this, so we can add it to this messages list. So I'm going to click on make chat log, and we can just pass it here. Now the role of this is not system anymore, it's the actual user. So we change that to user, and then we want to add this chat log to the messages. So what we can do here is we can drag from this, and we can use the add function right here, and we want to add it to the messages here. So we drag from the messages, get messages, put it here, and we say whenever they talk, they should call ChatGPT, and whatever message that they said should be added to the list of messages that gets passed into ChatGPT. And then after we add it to the messages, we're going to call OpenAI like this. So what ends up happening is the user talks, whatever they said is going to get added to the list of messages that we have here, and then it's going to make a call to ChatGPT. All right, we're close to finishing this off. So once we make a call to ChatGPT, we want to wait for a response and then change the response from text to speech, calling Azure again. So the way you do that is you want to say whenever it's finished, so whenever ChatGPT generates a message, you want to check if it was a success or not. And we can use a if statement for this, or a branch. And we're going to say if it was a success, which is the Boolean here, we're going to push it here. So if it's a success, we want to use the text to speech of Microsoft Azure. And to do that, you're going to drag off from the branch, and there is a text to sound here, and I'm going to use it with default options again. And we're going to have that here. You can see you can choose the voice or the locale, but since we already did that in the plugins section, we don't need to do that. We just need to pass in the text we want it to change into speech. So we're going to grab the message here, we're going to drag from it, and we're going to break it. And break basically means whenever you have a complex structure as a response, so there's usually more than one piece of information in it, you're going to break it to see everything that it gives back. So you can see it gives back message, index, and finish reason. What we really care about is the message. So we're going to drag from here, and we're going to break this one as well. And we're going to take the content here. We don't really care about the role in this case. So we're going to drag the content into the synthesis text. And after Azure finishes, we want to play the sound that it generated. So what we're going to do is we are going to drag from synthesis completed. Again, we're going to wait for it to finish. Once it's finished, we're going to call play sound 2D, and this will play whatever audio that Azure sent back to us. And the sound that we wanted to play is the generated sound that Azure sent back. So with this, we should be able to make a call to GPT, get a response back, and then Microsoft Azure should change it back into a message. All right, one final thing we need to do in order to call GPT. Right now over here, after we change our speech into text, we get the prompt, but we're just doing print string. And what we want to do after we have the prompt is to actually call the GPT function that we created. So I'm just going to drag from here, and we're going to say call GPT, just like this. All right, there's one thing that we missed. So over here, you can see that I made the make chat settings and I passed it to the OpenAI call, but I actually forgot to connect our messages variable. So I'm going to connect it right here. Now I'm going to hit compile and we're going to try again. What should I play against Darius top?
There are several champions that can be effective against Darius top. Here are a few options. 1. Fiora. Fiora's mobility and ability to parry Darius' abilities can make her a strong pick against him. She can poke and harass Darius while also having the potential to outduel him in trades.
All right, I'm going to stop her right there. As you can see, we have it working now, which is awesome. We had a few hiccups on the way, but that happens, and it's good to see it so you can see how you can actually debug. All right, so now that we have that in place, let's do the final piece. We don't want the NPC to just like stand there like a stick. So what we want to do is we want to make it so that it's idle, but whenever she is talking, she's going to use the talk animation. So let's do that. So in the third person template, we're just going to add a new variable and we're going to call it be talking, as in it's a boolean that represents if the character is talking or not. And basically what we're going to do is we are going to get the duration of the message that is converted into a sound, and that's the duration that the character is talking. So I'm going to drag from here and I'm going to get the duration. So in this duration, we want the character to talk. So as soon as she starts talking, we're going to set this to is true, meaning that it's talking. So I'm going to drag from here and I'm going to set this to true. I'm going to this is an array. I want it to be a single value. So I'm going to go change that. All right. So as soon as she starts talking, I'm going to set is talking to be true. And then I'm going to wait the duration that it's supposed to talk. And then after that, I'm going to set is talking to false. So I'm going to delay. This is only one way of doing it. There's also other ways that you can do it as well. So I'm going to wait for this duration. That means, and after this duration, I'm going to set is talking back to false. Okay, so again, as soon as she starts talking and Microsoft Azure generates the sound wave, I'm going to set as talking to true. Then I'm going to wait the duration of the sound wave. And after that, I'm going to set as talking to false. Now I need to expose this to the animation that we're going to make for the NPC, and I'll show you how to do that. So in general, I'm just going to make one function, and I'm going to call this is character talking. And what I'm going to do is basically I'm just going to return the boolean here. And what I want to do is down here in the output, I want it to return whether the character is talking or not. So I'm basically just returning a boolean, and I'm going to call it talking. Is talking. And I'm going to pass in this variable that we just created into this function. So whenever anyone calls is character talking, it's going to return true or false based on whether the character is talking or not. So now we can actually create the animation logic for our character. So I'm going to go into our blueprints, and here we have our BP NPC. I'm going to right click here, go to animation, and choose an animation blueprint. And it tells you what skeleton you want to use. We want to use the dummy female skeleton right here in the top. Make sure you choose the right skeleton. And we're going to hit create, and we're going to name it ABP, short for animation blueprint, and NPC here. So we're going to double click here. An animation blueprint, if you haven't seen it before or used it before, it's used to write the logic for animation. So when should it play what animation? So in our case, we want the character to be idle. Unless it's talking, we want it to use the talking animation. So it brings the NPC to life and makes it a bit more realistic. So in order to do that, we want it to be idle and then call that function that we made. And if that's true, then that means we can go ahead. But if it's not, then we want to be in idle state. So we're going to right click here and search for a state machine. And it sounds more scary than it is. It's not that complicated. So I'm going to rename it main states like this, and I'm going to double click on it. So what we're doing here is basically whatever I just said in English, we want to show it here. So we want it to be idle by default. So what we're going to do on the right here, if you go into your asset browser, you'll find the idle animation. We're going to drag it here, and it's going to say idle anim. I'm just going to call this idle. So what we're doing here, we're saying by default, you should go into idle, meaning the character is going to be standing idle and playing the idle animation. So if I hit compile here, oh, let's go back to the anim graph here. And let's drag from main states into output pose. What we're saying here is that whatever is the result of this state machine, we want the character to go into that animation. So once I do this and hit compile, you'll see that it goes into idle because we're telling it that by default, go from entry into idle. So you'll see that our character right now is in idle state. So now the second state that we want is the talking one. So if you look over here, we should find a stand talk animation. So we're going to drag it right here. And I'm going to put it right here. So we want to go from idle into talking animation, and we want to be able to come back from talking animation back to idle. What's the condition? The condition is if the character is talking, go up. If the character is not talking, come down. So we need a way to call the character and ask it, are you talking or not? So the way you do that is you go to your event graph for the animation blueprint. We want to be able to access the character here. So what we're going to do, we're going to right click and look for the begin play event. The reason we're using the begin play event to find the character is because by default, before the game begins, the character is not in the game, right? So if I zoom out, you don't see the character. As soon as the game starts, they spawn in. So we need to wait until the game starts to be able to call them and ask them, are you talking or not? So over here, we're going to drag from here and say get actor of class. And the one we're looking for, the one we need a reference to, is the BP third person. So we're going to right click, we're going to click on this and search for BP third person character. And over here, we're going to get the result. And what we want to do is we want to promote it to a variable just for simplicity. And the variable is going to come here and we're going to rename it. You can press F2. We're going to rename it main character, for example, like this. Now, once we have the main character, we can actually call is talking function that we created, and we can store it in a variable here if we wanted to, or we can just use it right off the bat. So what we're going to do is create a variable, and we're going to call it is talking, and it's going to be a boolean. Now, every second or every frame of the game, the character can be talking or it can stop talking, right? So we need to get updated every time. So we need to know every frame whether the character is talking or not. And the way we do that is over here, you can see we have an event blueprint update animation and it has a delta time. This function basically gets called every frame. So of every frame, we need this variable that we have in the animation blueprint to get updated so that we can change our states based on it. So over here, I'm going to get the main character and I'm going to call that function that we created. I think we called it is character talking. Yep, so you see that function that we just created. So we're going to call this function every frame, and we're going to set the value of our variable here every frame. So now the animation blueprint will know all the time whether the character is talking or not. So now that we have this, let's hit compile. Now we come back to the animation, to our main state machine. Now we can double click here on the idle to stands. This is where we set the condition for when to go from idle to this animation. So we're going to double click here. So whenever the character is talking, we want to go to the talking animation. So I'm going to hit compile save. and then going to go back to the main states. When do we come back to idle? Whenever the character stops talking. So I'm going to double click this. So whenever they're not talking, we want to go back to idle. So I'm going to get the talk is talking, search for not. You want to choose the Boolean not right here. So whenever the character is not talking, we want to go back to idle. Hit compile and save. And now we should be able to see animate. Oh, one more step, I forgot. So we created this animation blueprint, but we need to assign it to our NPC. So I'm going to go into our NPC here, blueprint, click on the skeletal mesh. And over here under animation, you can see animation mode. We're going to use animation blueprint, and we're going to point it to the one that we just created, ABP NPC. We're going to click on that, hit compile, save. And if you come back here, you can see that our character is now in idle position. So let's go ahead and play. Right now, when we talk to it, it should do the talking animation. And when we stop, it should go back to idle. So let's give it a go. What should I play against Annie in the mid lane?
When facing Annie in the mid lane, it's important to choose a champion that can either match her burst damage or utilize long-range poke to harass her from a safe distance. Here are a few champions that can give you an advantage against Annie. 1. Zoe. Zoe has excellent long-range poke with her Q, Paddle Star, and E, Sleepy Trouble Bubble, allowing her to keep Annie at a distance. Her ability to burst down.
One last thing that I wanted to mention, the over here, when we are calling these character talking, when we're accessing the main character, what we want to do here is make sure that the character variable is set. So the way we want to do that, the application will run fine, but sometimes it'll give you an error after, and we just want to avoid that. So what you want to do is you want to right click on the main character and change this to a validated get. So this ensures that the actor of class is set before making the call to a function on it. So we change that to this. So this way, if the third person character is not set here, because everything runs in parallel, right, as the game begins, so this may get called earlier than this. So this ensures that you don't get any kind of null pointer exceptions or errors after you stop your application. All right, I hope that you enjoyed this video and you were able to build the project. And thanks for watching. Peace.